So you want to be a game master. Wunderbar. Come on in, pull up a chair, take a load off, because today I will be talking about table etiquette. And we'll get started right after this. Howdy, 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 gang. Welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. As I mentioned in the open, I am going to be talking about table etiquette during your role-playing game sessions. But first, if you are not familiar with this series or with myself personally, let me mention that I have been running role-playing games for over 40 years. Yes, I know, I'm old. But during that time, I have learned a lot of things that I feel are very important to being a successful game master. And very honestly, I think one of the most daunting tasks in all of gaming is being a good game master, dungeon master, keeper, referee, whatever you want to call yourself. It isn't easy. Especially when you're first getting started, you can easily be overwhelmed. So this series just allows me to share some thoughts, some ideas, some things I've picked up over the years to hopefully make your lives easier. Of course, I had originally thought of actually having this video a little further down the line in the series. And then I thought to myself, well, before we start talking about session 0 and rolling up characters for your players, maybe we should discuss how you go about laying down some ground rules so that everybody is on even footing, everybody knows what's going to happen. So first off, one of the biggest things today in gaming, and not just role-playing games, but even tabletop games, board games, card games, miniatures games around the table, is the discussion, do you allow people to have their phones? That is a tricky question. Now, myself, most of the role-playing games that I run now are for my nephew, his girlfriend, and their friends. And they are all in their late teens. So it's most likely that at times their parents need to get a hold of them, or maybe an employer or something like that. So what I do is I allow them to have their phones at the table, but I ask them to have them on vibrate. And don't be surfing the web, watching videos on YouTube, checking to see what's trending on Twitter or going on some Instagram while we're in the midst of playing the game. It's super easy for someone who's on their phone to start distracting the other players who maybe aren't bored, but now suddenly they're distracted and they're curious, well, what is Bob looking at over there that's so fascinating? Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff, what was that? Can be kind of frustrating. So, of course, if you are running a game with adults, then it's going to be your call. You know, most people respect your time and energy, so they're not going to allow themselves to be a distraction at your table. So it's something you got to balance. So I know some people who do not allow phones at their gaming table, period. And it doesn't matter what they're playing. It doesn't matter if they're playing a board game, role-playing game, what. No phones at the table. And I can completely understand that. Something else to keep in mind is other digital devices at your table, because I happen to be a fan, although I don't get to utilize this too much, especially now with COVID. But I am a fan of utilizing a tablet at your table, because, especially Call of Cthulhu, you're sharing a lot of handouts, a lot of clues with the other players. And got to be honest, it's very cost effective because you don't have to print things out if you're putting it on the tablet. Also, you can share music. I happen to be a very theater of the mind game master. So I do not use miniatures. I don't use maps when I'm at the game table. A virtual tabletop, that's a little different. But while I'm at the game table, I do not utilize a lot of the extra flash, right? I try to set the scene verbally. But you can also share images of different creatures, NPCs, locations. So I am a fan of utilizing a tablet at the table. But once again, keeping in mind that tablet is utilized for the game experience, not for people to sit there and take the tablet and start surfing the web. Something to keep in mind. Second item, goofing off and what I refer to as playing grab ass. This is something that can easily get out of hand. Now, I am not telling people to be a tyrant at their gaming table. I am certainly not a despot running role-playing games. And there are some decades-long running jokes that have evolved because of some goofing around at the game table. That said, it can easily get way out of hand, and especially like running jokes at the table. Now, when I said running joke, I talk about something that we bring up from time to time, not something that's going to be constantly repeated during the gaming session. But running jokes can really derail your gaming session. So can, like I said, playing grab ass is how I kind of refer to it. Where a lot of goofing around, a lot of messing around, a lot of things that are taking away focus from the game. Personally, I respect my players, but I also want respect in return because I have invested time and energy into preparing for this game session. And in a later video, I will talk about how no prep equals no fun. But we're not going to get into that right now. But I demand respect in return. So if I have invested time to be able to run an exciting adventure, because I really take pride in my ability to have a session where years later, players are going to talk about the time. Oh my gosh, I remember the time that XYZ happened in this adventure, and oh man, and I'm talking about people who can't tell you what they had for lunch yesterday, remembering things that happened 20 years ago in a Call of Cthulhu game. That's not going to happen if you've got everybody goofing around, joking around, once again, like I said, playing grab ass. It's difficult to know when to put the kibosh on that. I recommend, kidding around is fine. But if you notice that suddenly, and it's pretty easy to see this, if you notice suddenly that the main focus of the people around the table are to joke around and to one-up each other in new jokes, then it's time to take a moment, step back, and just point out, and this is what I've done in the past. Thankfully, this doesn't happen too often, but I have had to do this. I will just tell the group, is this what you want to do tonight, or are we here to play XYZ game? And just leave it at that. Let them decide. And there was one time that they were like, well, we don't know. And I was like, well, I guess we're not going to play then. And then, of course, that got in their head. We're like, okay, wait, now. Okay, we'll bring this down. We'll bring this down to a, dull roar. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Let people know that, hey, it's okay to joke around, to kind of get out of the adventure. Now, I have to say that I am not a 2 or 3 hour session game master. If I were, I probably would be less lenient to goofing around. But I tend to run long sessions, sometimes 8 hours or more. But that's kind of old school. But I also believe in having little breaks here and there. We usually have a meal. So there is downtime within the game. I do not expect everybody around the table to just be like wearing blinders, completely focused on the game. Last thing I will mention, uncomfortable topics. Now, if you're running a game for your closest friends, you probably have a pretty good idea of what topics are completely fine to discuss or touch upon and what are probably out of bounds or relatively taboo. If you are playing and running a game for relative strangers, co-workers, things like that, there's a concept called the X card. It's not something I have ever used. I am going to mention it. And essentially, it's just a card with a big X that sits in the middle of the table. And if at any point the game starts going in a direction that a player feels uncomfortable with, they can simply point at that X card. I haven't done that because simply I try to stay away from topics that might freak people out. But there are, for an example, I'm running, say, Call of Cthulhu. There can be some pretty scary things, especially since, like I said, I present my games more as theater of the mind. So I tend to be very descriptive, which could spook some people. Let's be honest. I mean, you're not going to be terrified of a role-playing game. That's just as silly as saying, oh my gosh, we played the board game Arkham Horror and I was terrified. Not going to happen. But it can happen where some people think, okay, this is getting a little intense. If that happens a lot, then I would definitely recommend that they're not part of your group, because it'd be very silly if somebody who gets triggered by things that might be scary are sitting down and they want to play Call of Cthulhu or another horror role-playing game that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But the most important thing is that you and your players always feel comfortable at the game table. Maybe you're into like really odd things or off the wall sort of things. Maybe some of your friends are as well around the table. Hey, knock yourselves out. That's fine. It's just when you have players at the table who are not into those things, who may feel uncomfortable about those things, that you have to keep in mind. Not everybody looks at life in the same way. I've never used an X card simply because I don't go over the top. I avoid what tend to be rather controversial topics. But once again, it is possible that I could run a game and somebody's like, whoa! Here's the most important thing about using an X card, or myself personally, when I've run horror games with a new group, I just say, hey, if I start going into a direction that you don't feel comfortable with, just say it. Just say, hey, whoa, hang on, Jeff. And all I got to do is take a moment to just stop, kind of restructure what's going on, and then pick up from there. Never ask your players why they are uncomfortable. That is none of your business. That does not matter at all. All that matters is they are feeling uncomfortable with the direction the story is moving in. So redirect where the story is going. I know there are some game masters out there like, well, after the game, I want to discuss, why they felt the way they did. Stay away from that. Don't even bother with that. Just understand that the player felt uncomfortable. And if you'd like, after the session, apologize to that player and say, hey, I'm sorry you felt uncomfortable about that. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. That's it. You are not a psychiatrist, psychologist. You are not a therapist. It's none of your damn business why they felt uncomfortable. They just did. So those are just a few items to keep in mind when trying to set some some ground rules for your role-playing game table. Once again, it's so much easier to just talk about things up front before you start playing, as opposed to play a few sessions and then repeated bad behavior, even from yourself, just starts to wear on everybody's nerves until somebody snaps. And who knows, that could be the end of your gaming group, and you could have avoided that very easily. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, ding that bell, because it'll not only let you know when I upload videos such as, so you want to be a game master, it'll also let you know when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Monday through Thursday nights right here on YouTube as I bring you the latest in tabletop gaming news. Thanks for watching. Once again, I am Jeff McAleer, and I will be back next time. I promise. Next video is going to be Session 0. We will talk about rolling up player characters and some of my thoughts about that. So until I see you next time, as I tend to wrap up all my videos during this never-ending pandemic, I certainly hope all of you out there are being smart and staying safe. Oh, hey, you're still here. Well, if that's the case, by all means, if you haven't subscribed to the Gaming Gang channel yet, click right here. If you'd like to see the latest episode of the Gaming Gang Dispatch, click right up there. And if you want to trust YouTube's algorithm to give you something to watch, click right there. Once again, thanks so much for watching, and everybody please wear a mask.